We are learning Tanya, and we're in the middle of Perek Yates, chapter 19. And we read quite a bit, read almost a whole page, almost a whole limit. And I told you then that this week, today, we're going to revisit this. We're going to be going over this again, because there are things that I wish to discuss. The term which is going to be first discussed in today's class is the word teva, is the word nature. If you will accuse me of being stuck on the word teva, I will accept the blame. I'll say, yes, indeed, I am stuck on the word teva. The more Chassidus you learn, Chassidus doesn't really become bigger. It becomes deeper. It becomes deeper. And there is no sefer in Chassidus that this is truer about than the Tanya, the Sefer Tanya Kadisha, the Teirish of Iksav. There are many levels in Chassidus.
So you can learn it on a simple level, on a deeper level.
What you're asking is, can you understand it correctly on a simple level and then understand it more correctly? I think so. I think it's never perfect, but it's Torah. The only person who understands Torah perfectly is the Eibishter. Moshe Rabbeinu, the Rebbe, the Noisei na Torah, you understand? But I think so. I think you can understand that on a certain level. And the more you pay attention to the Tanya, the more this particular idea comes out at you. All over the Tanya. And we're learning now Perek Yates for the third time. Okay, we're sitting here. We started these shiurim right after Gimel Tammuz Nundal. We're sitting at 27 years. That's a very, very long time. And during these 27 years, we learned many things. But one of the things that we've learned is we've learned the Tanya 3 complete times. Every time I say to Ayal, she says, no, start from the beginning again. So in Ichves and Tafshin Pei tests, when we're ready to start round 4, we'll negotiate one more time whether we're going to learn Igeres HaKedesh. But we've learned Tanya 3 times. And if you've been on this round, you see, I keep going back to the word Teva. The end of Perek Aleph, the word Teva is important. Oh, Perek Vav, Perek Zayin, most important in the beginning of Perek Ches, the word Teva is very important. Perek Yud Beis, when he speaks about Moyach Shal Talalev, he says the word Teva. Perek Yud Gimel, the word Teva comes up again. And the word Teva comes up now also. In chapter 19, the word Teva reappears. So I'm giving you a speech that I've given to you many times before. Okay? First the basic background, then the shmooze, and then the chiddush. Okay, I'm repeating this again because there's something very, very important that you have to understand about the word teva here. You know what? Let me show it to you inside. If you have a Tanya open to page Chav Daled Amud Beis, that's page 48. The line that begins with the word beteva. I mean, again, if you were here 2 weeks ago, I pointed out that the Alter Rebbe uses the word teva about 8 times. Over the word teva, betiv'ah, keeps coming up. The line that begins with the word betiv'ah, it's a little bit more than halfway down the page. The first word on the line of betiv'ah, it says v'teva zeh. This meaning of the word teva, whose shema mushal is a borrowed term, l'chol davar, to anything she'enei bebechinas tam v'das, which you can't explain. What does the Alter Rebbe mean v'teva zeh? Because the word teva is used in Tanya in 2 different ways. And this is what I'm going to present to you this morning. This is the shiur that I'm starting with. You know, I'm the Maggid Shiurs. I can do what I want, and this is what I'm doing. I'm starting the shiur with a lecture, which I've given probably 3 or 4 times already since we started Tanya for the 3rd time. Mit Zimach Yard Tzdik. I don't know how long we started. It says in my modim, in a lot of my modim, the Rebbe of my modim particularly, which speak about Nes and Teva. There's a whole sugi in Chassidus, Nes and Teva. Our Rebbe has developed this sugi l'chayda more than any other Rebbe before. There's so many more of the Rebbe, Nes and Teva. And it always will make Meshikosu, B'shal Tshuvas, Chacham Tzvi. The Maimorim bring a tshuva from one of the Achreinim, the Chacham Tzvi. Chacham Tzvi was the father of Rabbi Yankov Emden, the Yavitz, one of the greatest Gedolei Yisrael, the times of the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid and the Alter Rebbe. His father was a Chacham Tzvi. He lived in England, I think. He was a Godel, and if his tshuvas are brought in Chassidus, that's a raya that the Rabbeim held that his Torah was written by Ruach HaKodesh. Because in Maimonides Chassidus they bring, the Maimorim are very selective. In Nigla they bring everybody. But in Chassidus the Rabbeim are very, very, very selective, very precise about who they quote. And if in a Maimer Chassidus they bring Meishe Kosa B'Shal Tshuvas Chacham Tzvi, it's because this Tshuva, at least, the Chacham Tzvi, his sefer is with Meruch HaKodesh. So there's the Tshuva from the Chacham Tzvi where he translates the word Nes and he translates the word Teva. And the Maimorim, whenever they talk about Nes and Teva, they start Meishe Kosa B'Shal Tshuvas Chacham Tzvi. We're not talking about Nes, we're talking only about Teva. And when they talk about Teva, there being three translations. Obviously, Teva means nature, right? What does nature mean? What does nature mean? Nature means predictable and controlled and contained. That's what it means. Nature means if you know a person well enough, you can almost say, I know what they're going to do in this case. I know how they're going to react. How do you know? I know his nature. Nature means a programming that is fixed. And because it's fixed, you can predict. Because of what happened yesterday, you know what's going to happen today, you know what's going to happen tomorrow. When you throw a rock up, it's going to fall down. This is nature. It's called gravity. How do you know? Because last time I threw it, came down. And the time before that I threw it also came down. So the word nature means a fixed programming which creates predictability. Because of the past, you can know the future. That's what nature means, bepashtus. But the Chacham Tzvi says two more words about nature. Number one, the teva is from the word matbeya. Matbeya does not mean a coin. Matbeya means a mint. A place where you make many coins. Like you have in Gemara, in Chazal, in Shas. Matbeya shetov chachamim bebrachas. Matbeya shetov chachamim begittin. Matbeya means a design. So matbeya doesn't mean one coin. It means a press by which you create repeated the same picture. You understand? Matbeya means a mint from which you make many, many coins. So the Sha'al Teshuvas Chacham Tzvi says that the meaning of the word teva means something that conforms to a matbeya, a stamp, right? Like you have in the Gemara. The part of it's quoted in Tanya, that before neshama is born, there's a malach hamamun al hayroyin. There's a malach that oversees pregnancy. And the way I imagine it in my head, when a neshama comes out of Gan Eden, has to come into this world, so he goes down an assembly line. There's a bunch of malachim. One malach is in charge of oisher, rich, upper middle class, middle class, lower middle class, poor, very poor, dirt poor, dal, evyin, oni, osher, and so on. And he takes the stamp, gets a stempel, hartik. The malach decides they're going to be rich or poor. You can't do anything about it. He stamped you with this stamp. You go to the next stamp, chocham, tipish, badas, how smart you're going to be. Stamp, agapaskin. And that's how you go down an assembly line, and all kinds of things are predetermined. You're going to be pretty, you're going to be ugly, you're going to be tall, you're going to be short. They even the paskin who you're going to marry. One thing they don't determine. Right? Hakel bidei shamayim chutz me'yirei shmayim. That's what the Gemara says. It's the same Gemara. That the malach determines so many characteristics about a person. But your relationship with the Eibishter, which is not about how rich you are and how poor you are and how smart you are and how simple you are and how pretty you are, how ugly you are, that has to do with free will. And the Gemara says, was it Lashon? Tzadik v'rasha leika omar, right? They don't say if you're going to be a tzadik or a rasha, because that's hakel b'dei shamayim chutz miyir, is predetermined. But all other things, many other things, are predetermined by what's called a matbeya. Matbeya means a mint. Men stempelt on. Every neshama comes down. It's, again, this is my fantasy. That's not how the Gemara describes it, but that's how I imagine it. Many things are predetermined about a person before the neshama comes into this world. Wie wird sein, and it's sad. The Gemara says about Moshe ben Ptos, he was very poor. And he complained to the Eibishter about his poverty. So the Eibishter said, I'll tell you what, Mutiv, lichrev alma, I'll destroy the whole world. I'll create the whole thing from the beginning again. And the world will exist for so many thousands of years. And when you'll come around, he says about Pepitos, maybe you'll be born in a mazel of Mezena, where you'll have parnosa. So I have a lot of Pepitos, so akapon de parnosa. Because some things you can't help. That's what the word teva means. It's predetermined. It's fixed. So matbeya means a mint. Every neshama before it's born, many things are predetermined about that neshama, and that's just how it is. You know, in Kabbalah we call it levushim, predispositions, tendencies, leanings. But that's how the second type of the word matbeya. Matbeya means a mint that fixes each creation. It locks it into certain characteristics, and that's what the Eibishter made.
Not to oversimplify or to ask a question, but obviously this is Hashem that
Obviously, naturally.
I mean, it sounds
The malach mamun al hayroyin. A malach is kegazim b'yad ha'cheitzevei. The malach does what he's told. Then there's a third characteristic of teva, which I think we have a much easier time relating to. It's from the word tuvu v'yamsuf. When something is chas v'shalom drowning, it's called tviyah. It's immersed. It's completely surrounded by water, and it can't see the sky. It can't raise itself above the water. The third concept in teva is I'm stuck in it. I'm completely immersed in it, and I can't extricate. I can't take myself out of this teva. So the Shas Shuvas Chacham Tzvi offers us these insights, right? Number one, and this I don't know if it says so much in Shuvas Chacham Tzvi or this is such common sense. Teva means a nature that you can predict. Based on what the person was before, you can predict how it's going to be later. Teva means that the Eibishter stamps and seals. In Yiddish, riegelt. He predetermines what various characteristics of the neshama are going to be that they can't go out of. And number three, the neshama, the person, the being, is completely sunk into it and can't get out of it. That's how you translate the word teva in Maimori Chasidis, the beginning of the sugya of teva. Then, of course, it gets much, much more involved because we believe in Hashgacha Pratis and Achtas Hashem and Ein Eid Movadei. But this is the simple insights that are offered in the Shas Shuvas Chacham Tzvi about the word teva. Based on this, in the Tanya, the word teva is used often, and it's always used in the context of klipa. What does klipa mean? Klipa means a shell. Klipa means a peel. Klipa means a covering. And again, if you come around here, if you're an experienced Talmida in Beis Medrash at Noshim Abona 770, so you've heard this from me before. The mashal for a klipa is an exoskeleton, but the Eibishter made living creatures. The Eibishter made lebedik ezach, living organisms. The very fancy living organisms have what's called spinal cord, a nerve that runs from the top of the goof till the bottom, that keeps it together, that feels and that integrates and so on and so forth. And for many of the chordatas, many of the creatures that have a cord, they also have vertebrata, they have vertebrae, they have bones that cover over this spinal cord and they protect it, but they bend, right? My back bends. My back is made of a bunch of little bones. Each one of these little bones is two ribs that come around from the back till the front. It protects my goof, and it makes me flexible. I can move. I don't have infinite flexibility. I have flexibility, yeah. Other creations that are called crustaceans, they have no bones. They have no bones at all, none. So what holds them up? So most of them live in water. That's how they hold up. Or they're very, very, very small, like insects. And the way they're held up is because they have a shell. The shell. And this shell is their strength and it's their limitation. It holds them. Inside the shell they're able to live. Because of the shell they're able to expand. But because of the shell they're also limited. And again, I'm not a big maven in this. From the little bit that I know, this shell doesn't grow. It's not like the shell of a turtle. The shell of a turtle is bones. It's a shell that doesn't change. It's fixed. So if the animal gets bigger, the shell doesn't get bigger, it gets crowded. So they have a process which is called a molt. They have to hide in a crack so nobody should eat them. And they excrete a chemical which makes the shell soft. And the shell, they creep out of their shell and then they create a bigger one. And then when they get even bigger and the shell becomes crowded, so they hide into another crack so nobody should eat them. They excrete a chemical which makes their shell soft. They creep out of the shell. They make a bigger shell. That's what klipa means. It's the perfect mashal. Klipa means I'm stuck inside here and whatever is, and what's not in here I can't change. Finish. That's what klipa means. Inside the klipa you have a living creature. Inside the klipa you have a piece of the Eibishter, but it's trapped. And as long as the shell remains whole, whatever the shell says that the living creature inside is, it is. It can't be anything different. That's really the higoyen. That's the meaning of the word klipa. I've told you this 100 times. Klipa doesn't mean bad. Klipa means limited. Inside every creation, I'll use this fancy word even though it's not necessarily entirely true, there is something called reshus. Reshus means freedom. From the shus comes yecheles, comes the possibility to make any choice you want. The klipa doesn't let. The shell, whatever shell the Eibush that placed on me, this is what I am. And this is what the Malach Hamamuna Lahirayan does. This angel, that as the neshamas come out of Gan Eden and they come down into this world and they acquire the levushim that they need to be able to have a shaykhs to a guf and so on and so forth, the Malach puts a shell on that neshama that limits it. You were meant to be rich, can't be poor. You're meant to be poor, you can't be rich. You're meant to be smart, you can't be simple. You're meant to be simple, you can't be smart. All of these things are predetermined by Atzmas Hussein Baruch Hu, and they're your nature. Nature means your limitation. Nature means your limitation. Nature means your limitation. So when it comes to Avodas Hashem, to a relationship with the Eibishter, if you have a limitation in your ability to relate to the Eibishter, it's called a klipa, a block. It holds you back. I want to serve Hashem. My nature doesn't let me. So we associate the word klipa with ra, with evil. Might we have klipas noiga, we have klipas tmeim v'royim lagamri, but klipa means I would like to serve the Eibishter. My nature doesn't let me. That's what klipa means. And then we add other words which are very disturbing. We add the word tumah, we add the word sitra achara, we even sometimes add the word ra. But that's what klipa means. The Eibishter gave me a nature, it fixes me and it holds me. Now, let's be complicated. Okay, let's make believe we're all very smart and we're big experts. Let's be complicated. The nefesh habahamis has a teva. The nefesh habahamis is klipa, even by a yid. The nefesh habahamis has a teva. It has a shell that fixes it into a certain series of character traits that it cannot exceed. It can't change. This is what Hashem made. You can't do anything about it. Because of that, the nefesh habahamis is a behemoth. Some behemoths are kosher. Kosher animals like to eat grass. They don't want to kill or hurt anybody else. But they have no capacity to be anything more than the animal the Eibishter made them. Like the mashal that I always give you, try to explain to animal that it should look up at the sky and see beauty. So what does the animal answer? I can't eat it. I have to eat. Tell me the sky is beautiful. Yeah, but you have eyes and your eyes can see beauty. No, I have to put it in my mouth. If I can't put it in my stomach and fill my gullet, ich darf es nicht. He's a behemoth. It's klipa. The nefesh habahamis of a human being is klipa. The Eibishter gave it a personality that limits it, and it can't change that klipa. That's what makes it klipa. Klipa is not because it's limited. Klipa is because it's limited and it can't go out of that limit. What about the nefesh elokis? What about the neshama? The neshama of nefesh elokis is a tricky situation. The expression which is used in the Maimorim, and from what I am able to see, it seems to me that the Rebbe likes this expression. You don't have it so much in Samach Vav, but you don't have it so much. The Rebbe repeats this expression, I think, a lot. The name of the neshama is, quote, Elokus Shenasa Nivra. The neshama is called Elokus Shenasa Nivra. How godliness becomes a creation. Now, if you understand the meaning of the word godliness, and you understand the meaning of the word nature, you understand that they're a contradiction. Godliness means no limit. Nature means limit. Creation means limited. So how could the neshama be a Elokus Shenasa Nivra? And the answer is, the teretz is, neshamas have a teva. The nefesh elokis has a teva. Just like the nefesh habahamis has a teva, the animal soul has a nature which limits it. The nefesh elokis also has a nature, but there's a difference. The neshama's nature is not inhibiting. If the neshama works hard enough, it could change his nature. It could change his nature, as you heard the expression. Hergel nasa teva sheni, you could develop a second nature. And it even says in some places that you could be mishada your teva to become a new teva rish. That's the difference in the nefesh habahamis is teva, and the nefesh elokis is teva. They both have a teva. Teva means a limit, a crust, a shell that fixes me and holds me in certainly character traits that I cannot exceed and I cannot alter and I cannot change. In the nefesh habahamis, that's the way it is. You can't do anything about it because it's klipa. Klipa means I can't break the shell. Nefesh elokis also has a teva. But it's kedusha, which means the neshama is free through avoida to change its teva, to take on a new nature, to go beyond its nature, to completely violate the need for a nature. These are different madregas. But this is the difference between how you have the word teva on the nefesh habahamis and you have the word teva on the nefesh elokis, which leads me to my point. Biklal in Chasidus, And this is how I taught you the Tanya this time around. From the beginning, I've been teaching it this way. And if I'm wrong, this is a big mistake. But I don't think I'm wrong. In the Tanya, whenever you have the word Teva, it's talking about the Nefesh Habahamis. Even when it says Meyach Shalat al Alev B'Teva, Moyach Shalat al Alev B'Teva is Nefesh Habahamis, not Nefesh Elokis. Even the Nefesh Habahamis is Meyach Shalat al Alev B'Teva. Unless you could corrupt it, you can ruin the Teva, you could make it worse. But when it says in Tanya Peirik Yud Beis Meyach Shalat al Alev B'Teva, it means the Nefesh Habahamis is Meyach Shalat al Alev. If a person never does an Aveda, his Nefesh Habahamis, his nature is that when the Mayach tells the Lev, do kach v'kach, the Lev will listen. If you do Avedas, you compromise the Teva and you can lose it. The Teva is still Mayach Shalat al Alev, but I've corrupted it through Shikua in Taivis, whatever the case is, I lose control of that Teva. So when you haven't paid it, Beis in Tanya, Meyach Shalat al Alev, but Teva, it's even the Nefesh Habahamis. Nefesh Elokis is for sure, Kol Shkein v'Kal V'Chemer. But when it comes to Nefesh Elokis, you have different things. If you, again, I don't want to go over everything that we learned. The idea that a Beinoni could be a for sure a Balabayis over himself is a combination of the Teva, which applies also to the Nefesh Habahamis. And the second idea, that to the Neshama, Teiv and Ra, Zeir and Cheshach. Good and evil is light and dark. It's not even a choice. Light and dark have never had a fight ever in history. Why? Because darkness is not a thing. It only has a koyach if you give it a koyach. So the word Teva in the Tanya, usually, the way I understand it, in the beginning of Perek Ches, and the Perek Yud Beis, and then the Perek Yud Gimel, when he talks about the word Teva, he's saying even the Nefesh Habahamis has his nature, has Moyach Shalat al Alev, whatever the particulars of that are. Okay? So throughout the Tanya that we've learned, and it's going to come up later again, if I'm not mistaken, we always associate Teva with limit. With limit. A limitation. And usually the association of Teva with limit is Nefesh Habahamis. But not here. So the Alter Rebbe says, V'Teva Zeh. That's why he says the word Zeh. When we say the word Teva here, it's different than throughout the Tanya. Because over here we're using the word Teva for the exact opposite reason. When a creation has a nature to do something which goes against the laws of nature, you say it's higher than reason. See, here we're also using the word Teva, but we're using the word Teva mamish min hakotz el hakotz. Usually Teva means this is my limitation. This is my box. This is what I mean. I can't change my Teva. Here we're saying Teva is, this is completely beyond any limitation. It's so beyond any limitation, you simply cannot explain how that could be. Why? Simple, common sense, simple. Because the first nature of every creation is, he wants to be. The limit of every creation is, he wants to be himself, he doesn't want to be a source. But Teva means limit, yeah? What's my limit? I want to be me, I don't want to be God. Yeah, but if I'm God, I'm going to be bigger and better. No. If I'm God, I stop being me and I become a flake. I become an insignificant piece of photon of light and ain't safe. I become a nothing. Kol chai reitze b'kiyum. Every living thing wants to exist. It's a fundamental law of Teva. So usually, Teva means limit. And one of the basic inyonim, when it comes to the idea of limit, is I want to be me. When you encounter a circumstance of a creation who says, I don't want to be me, I want to be God. So the Alter Rebbe says, I use the word Teva, but I'm not using the word Teva because it has a limit. I'm using the word Teva because I don't know how to explain it. Ich kann es nicht geben zu verstehen. I cannot explain it. So in our Pedic, Lab Yud Tes, Alter Rebbe must have said the word Teva 6 or 7 times. And we're going to be going over it from the beginning. We're going to read now inside. So you'll see the words again in Mitzvah Shem. In other words, the same words I read 2 weeks ago, I'm reading a second time. But I advertised, I told you 2 weeks ago that today's class was going to start this way. Throughout Tanya, Teva means limit. And here Teva means so beyond limit, I don't know how to explain it. So I'm using the word Teva for lack of choice. Let me give you an example which the teenagers can't get over. Yeah, the word that we use to describe the Eibish's Rush in creation is Taivus. So what do the kids tell you? The boys and the girls. Is a Baal Taiva, ich bin a Baal Taiva. Gibt sich noch, ich gib sich noch. Hashem has Taivas and I have Taivas. His Taivas are important and they're good. My Taivas teigen nicht. What's in his Taiva? What's the answer? It's the same word, but it has the diametrically opposite meaning. By a person, Taiva means a weakness, a loss of self-control. I'm enslaved to this or that or the other thing. Everybody has lusts, but you're not supposed to give in to those lusts, because when you give in 1 time and 2 times and 3 times, you become a slave, and then you have no free will. So I translate the word Taiva as weakness. But the Eibishter Taiva is not weakness, but the Eibishter Taiva is emes, it's strength. And the same with the word Teva. As a rule, Teva means limit. It means containment, the inability to exceed what I am, and usually it's associated with, like I said before, with Tumma and Sitra Achara and even Ra. Here, Teva means something else. Alter Rebbe says I'm using the word Teva because when I am describing something that I can't possibly explain, the only word I can use is Teva. It's nature. You can predict it. But it's not predictable because it's limited. It's predictable because it makes no sense at all. There's a younger man that I know casually. I don't know him very well. I know him casually for a number of reasons. The primary reason, I'm casual because I taught one of his children. So from time to time, when our paths cross, once a year, twice a year, we schmooze. I knew his parents. So he told me once that when my parents dated, his father must have been 15 years older than his mother. After the war, she was a young girl and he was a alta bocher. So when they dated, she said to him, "Ich habe es gehört von dem Sohn. I just want to hear it from the son. I'm not taking any responsibility for it. And I'm not saying any names. I don't need any tzaddis." She says to her chassan, "What is your ambition in life? What do you want to accomplish in your life?" So he says to her, "I want to become one with God." Now imagine a girl dating a bachel. And she says to him, "What's your Ifa, was willst du von dem Leben?" What? She's going to run away. She's called him out, pick me up. The guy's out of his mind. She started to cry. She thought it was so sweet. Anyway, they got married and lived happily ever after. A story. Amaise. What's the logic here? What's the logic here? You could call that nature. Yeah, it's a nature. But it's not a nature which represents limit. It's nature that represents the ability to break every limitation, including the most fundamental limitation of all, which is I want to be. The most fundamental limitation of anything is I want to be. The idea that a human being should say I want to become one with HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a violation of that teva. So we use the word teva because we don't have words. Doesn't we use the word nesava because we have no words? Okay? Questions or comments? I'm warning you, if you have no questions, have no comments, we're going to actually start again the beginning of Perikah and reread what we learned 2 Sundays ago. Okay, you're not afraid of me. Okay, let's go. Perikah, which means we're starting on the bottom of page 47. Yes, Chov Zayin Omed Aleph. And again, if you were here 2 weeks ago, we went through this whole thing. The next 15-20 lines is a moshel and a nimshel. The moshel is a candle. The nimshel is the neshama, and in each one there is 3 parts. Okay, I'm just going to say one point before I start, and I told this to you 2 weeks ago, more bariches, and that is Tanya is the Teidish of Eksav of Chasidus, which means that the Chasidus is the Teidish of Alpeh of the Tanya, and they speak different languages. In many ways, it's clear that the Tanya was written in a different construct than the Alter Rebbe's own Maimoreh. You understand? And one of the examples is when we say the word candle, what do we mean? In Tanya, when you say the word candle, you mean fire. In the Maimoreh, when you say the word candle, you mean the keli, the cup and the fuel and the wick, everything but the fire. Okay, this is just a fact. It's just a fact that in Tanya, the word neir means something different than in the Maimorim that are the Teidish of Alpeh of the Tanya, and you got to get used to it. In Tanya, neir means fire. In my modern ner means kli, right? If you remember the Vedaita Moskva, the ner Chanukah Mem Gimel, lansish belas. I don't speak French, but that word I know. I've taught that mime so many times. I'm probably mispronouncing it. Lansish, lins. I don't know how to speak French. But here we go. Just keep in mind that detail. That's an additional explanation to what we said in the second half of Perek Yud Ches in describing Ava Misoteres. And the way we described Ava Misoteres is that Ava Misoteres has to do with Ein Seif, which rests in Chochmah, in any body which is Kedusha. And since every Jew has a spark of Kedusha from the Oves, so in our Chochmah there is Ein Seif, and from the Ein Seif, which is an our Chochmah, because we're Kedusha, the Alter Rebbe described two character traits, Emunah and Mesidus Nefesh. And we gave 4 classes, 2 classes on Emunah, and 2 classes on Mesidus Nefesh. So the Alter Rebbe says, I want to continue this explanation here in Perek Yud Tes. Says the Rebbe, Tzarech Lavayir hated Mashakosov. We start with a pasuk. Neir Hashem nishmas adam. That a Yiddish neshama is compared to a candle. And of course you all know the other pasuk. Ki neir mitzvah v'teir eir. Mitzvahs are also compared to a neir. But just like mitzvahs are compared to a neir, the neshama is compared to a neir. And in Tanya, neshama means fire. Pirush, she Yisrael akruyim adam. Yidno are called adam. Nishmasam he, their soul is lamoshel, by way of example. And he gives you 3 characteristics. Number 1, eir haner, the light of a candle, shemis na'aneya tomid. It's constantly moving. Lamaila, upwards. Betive is the first time, right? Count how many tevas you have. Betivai by its nature. Okay, now, but when you're talking about a physical candle, nature taka means limit. Why? Mipnei she'ein ha'eish chofetz beteva. The light of a fire wishes by nature. So you have teva twice already. Lipodet mi'apsil, to separate itself from the wick. V'lidovik, and to attach itself. B'shorshe, in its root, l'mayla, on high. B'yesarid ha'eish ha'kloli, in the element of fire which is general. Shetachas galgal ha'yerech, which is beneath the orbit of the moon. Also it doesn't only say in Rambam and in philosophy, it says in Kabbalah also. The fire wants to go up and come back to its source. That's characteristic number 1. Number 2, and even though if the fire leaves the candle and successfully goes back to its source, it's going to go out, it's going to be extinguished. So first of all, down here there's going to be no fire, it's going to be gone. If you'll see the place where this fire goes to, you will see that it loses its form, its goof, in its root. The fire doesn't have any flames. The fire doesn't even have any heat. In the Eisha Yeshedi, fire isn't flames, fire isn't even heat. Fire is entirely theoretical. It's called hiyuli. It exists in a potential of a potential. So the fire, which is in actual existence, is prepared to go up to its source, lose its metzias, and become nothing. That's against the law of nature, which says, I want to be. Concludes the Alter Rebbe, Afapekei, nevertheless, Bekachu Chafetz, this is desire of fire. What's the next word? Betive, by its nature. So the word Teva was already invoked 3 times in the Mashal. Fire wants to go back to its source. In its source, it's going to stop being. And the only way to explain it is the word Teva. But you see, in the Mashal of fire, you have to say Teva means its limitation, even though we can't understand it. But then he continues, in the Nimshal Kach, Nishmas Ha'od, the same is true of the Neshama of a person. V'chein Bechinas Ruach. And it's also true of the level of Ruach. V'nefesh, the level of Nefesh. And again, this is another difference between the Tanya and the Maimorim. In the Maimorim, everybody has all 5 levels. Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chai, Yechida. But in Tanya, you have either Nefesh, but only Nefesh, or Ruach, or Neshama. And when you learn the Tanya and you learn Maimorim, how do they say it in Yeshivish? It's confusing. It's not confusing, it's 2 different languages. In the Tanya, it goes the language of the Zohar. I told it to you many, many times. And in the Zohar, that we say by the Maimon Lashon, Mamayel, you get Nefesh, and if you're Zohar, you get Ruach, and if you're Zohar, you get Neshama. We only have Nefesh. And in the Maimonim, everybody has all 5 levels. It's a difference of form. It's not a difference of substance. It's a difference of form. So the Alter Rebbe says the neshama of a person, and even the ruach of a person, and even the nefesh of a person. I'm reading on chefza v'cheshka. It's desire and it's longing. Betiva, that's the 4th time the word teva appears by its nature. Lipare, to depart. Velotas, to go out. Minagu, from the body. Vilidovik v'shosha makeda, to cleave, to become one with, to become in a state of dvekis with. Its root and its source, which is by the Shem and the Meibishten. Chaye hachayim baruchu, who was the source of life for all living things, blessed be He. So the neshama wants to stop being in the guf, and he wants to become one with a lakus. Let me throw in a vort and a maise, which is peladik to emesis. It says in Lekutei Deburim, this detail somehow is not sufficiently celebrated in the story. We all know the story of Ayeka. Alter Rebbe was visited by a minister who was a big chacham and he knew Torah, and he asked the Alter Rebbe Ayeka, and the Alter Rebbe asked him if he believes in the Eibishter and Hashgacha Pratis and in the Nitzchias HaTorah. And when he told the Alter Rebbe, yeah, the Alter Rebbe told him that the Eibishter is talking to you, and he's asking you Ayeka. So the Frierdiker Rebbe says, when Alter Rebbe was sitting in jail, he was in a state of the highest tainug. Why? He has the schus to sit in jail for the Baal Shem Tov. Like the famous Loshen Baruch Mezhebush is the biological grandson, but I am the real Einikal. I'm the Ruchnius the Einikal. I sat in jail for the Baal Shem Tov and not him. So the Frierdiker Rebbe says that the Alter Rebbe was sitting in jail for the covet and for the sustaining and the continuing of Teres Baal Shem Tov, and he was holding by Kaleis HaNefesh the taiva, the gishmak, the delight, the pleasure of being able to sit in jail for the Baal Shem Tov was so great, his neshama almost left the goof. So when he told this guy, Ayeka, he heard it himself. You lived in this world so many years, and so many months, and so many weeks, and so many days, and so many hours, and so many minutes, and so many seconds, and the Eibush is saying to you, Ayeka, where are you holding in the fulfillment of your shlichus? And this affected by the Alter Rebbe Ashoiv. As they say in Lubavitch, oisfir in the kavona al yaina, to carry out the mission for which the neshama came into the guf. But that's the teva of the neshama. The teva of the neshama doesn't want to be in this world, has to go against its teva. Oisfir in the kavona al yaina. The teva of the neshama is to be one with Hashem. There's a maimed in Samach Vov, which is also very underappreciated. In this maimed, the Rebbe uses 2 expressions. Teva ha'etzem and Mehus ha'etzem. The nature of etzem, which everybody loves to translate as essence, so of course I'm not allowed to like it. And Mehus ha'etzem, the substance of essence. What's the difference? The Teva ha'etzem is the neshama wants to go away from this world and come on with HaKadosh Baruch Hu like we're learning here. Mehus ha'etzem is, what does the Eibishter want from me? Mo'ad Hashem Elokecha shel yimach. Shuv. But the Teva ha'etzem is that it wants to leave the goof and become one with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Let's read on. Hagam, even though Shetihiyah, that the neshama will be ayin ve'efes, nothing and nothing. What's the difference between ayin nothing and efes nothing? Ayin nothing means I once was it, I'm not anymore. Efes means I'm so nothing, it's like I never was. Verstehst? V'tizbatel shom b'metzius legamre. In Chaye Chaim and Tzei Baruch Hu, in the Meibishten, the neshama is going to become bottled in its form, lagamri. And now here the Rebbe uses the word mahus also. Nothing will remain of the neshama, mimahusa, from its substance, vatzmusa, and its etzem, whatever etzem means, harishein. So the neshama wants to go back to the Meibishten. That's point 1. When the neshama goes back to the Eibishten, it loses its metzias. Lamata v'gam lamayla, it becomes nothing in the Meibishtin. So why would any creation want to give up what it is and disappear? Afapikei, nevertheless, zeretzei nevechefta, this is its want, its desire. B'tiva. I think this is the 5th time the word teva is invoked. But I need to explain something to you. V'teva zeh. See, this is where I started today's class. V'teva zeh. When we speak about the neshama, and the neshama's desire to go out of the goof and become one with Atzmos and Hus, and lose its metzias. And the only way to explain it is nature. Over here, teva doesn't mean limitation. but rather who shema mushal. It's a borrowed allusion l'chol davar, to anything she'einei bebechinas ta'am v'das, that you can't explain. It's a teva, but it's not a teva in the sense of klipa. It's not a teva in the sense of limitation. To the contrary, it's a teva in the sense of absolutely no limit. No limit ad kedei kach that I want to give away what I am for something bigger than me, which is completely against the normal use of the word teva, which connotes limitation. And the Alter Rebbe uses the same word, because this is the preferred word, this is the best word to be used. But over here, teva is the biggest maila as opposed to the biggest chassadah. And the Rebbe says, v'gam kan. And that's the pshat over here. Hakavana, what we mean when we say that the neshama wants to leave this world and go back to be one with the Eibishter is Chai Chai Mein Sei Baruch. And over there it's going to become no Metzias and no Mohus and no Etzem. It's going to become one with the Eibishter Mamish. Says the Rebbe, Sherotzen v'cheif zeh b'nefesh. The neshama's will and desire, Einei b'bechinas tam v'das v'seichel. It's not reasonable, it's not understandable, and it's not understandable. Okay, the word seichel in Tanya is bina, which is musag u'muvan, that you could reach and that you can understand. You'll never be able to explain Mesiras Nefesh, never. Because if you're able to explain Mesiras Nefesh, then it's not Mesiras Nefesh. You'll never be able to explain Mesiras Nefesh. Mesiras Nefesh is in the neshama of a yid. We use the word teva, but we're using the word teva 180 degrees opposite of how the word teva is predictably and consistently and regularly used. It's l'mayla mitam v'das, rather than the limitation of tam v'das. Okay? Ella, but rather, we read on inside, l'mayla mehadas v'haseichel, it's above understanding, and it's above understanding. In my modern, seichel goes on chokhmah. Okay, usually seichel goes on chokhmah. In Tanya, it depends which peirik you read. Sometimes it means chokhmah, but sometimes it means bina. So how you translate the word das, and how you translate the word seichel, in this case, I don't know. Ha-musag v'ha-muvim, which can be reached and understood. It's beyond understanding. So the Alter Rebbe says, in the last peirik, we introduced ourselves to Ava Mesoteres. And we used a lot of very important words. We used the word Kedusha, we used the word Chochmah, we used the word Ein Seif. And we say that every Jew has Kedusha and Chochmah and Ein Seif, which is why every Jew has real Amunah. And every Jew has real capacity for Mesiras Nefesh. Says the Rebbe, what we learned last week, I'm explaining now. That there's sometimes a concept of teva, that the word teva doesn't mean limitation, but rather the word teva means it's completely beyond understanding. And now the Alter Rebbe connects this peirik to the last peirik. What we learned so far is new material. Yeah, it's a new mashal, it's a new nimshal. What's the next words? Vehi bechinas chochma. Remember the last peirik we talked about Ava Mesoteres. Remember in the last peirik, when we talked about Ava Mesoteres, we used the word Kedusha, we used the word Chochmah, we used the word Ein Seif, and we used these words to explain to us Emunah, real Emunah, and Mesiras Nefesh, real Mesiras Nefesh, Al Kiddush Hashem. So the Rebbe says, what I just described to you, using a mashal of a candle, on the Nimshal of the Neshama, this is the Chochmah for the last peirik. Every Jew has a pintel of Chochmah. What is Chochmah? It's the Teva of the Neshama. But not the teva of the neshama as the word teva is typically understood, to connote limitation which I can't go out of. To the contrary, it's the teva of the neshama that has absolutely no limits whatsoever in reason. V'hi bechinas chochma shebenefesh, it's the chochma in the neshama, shaba ein seif baruch hu, which ein seif rests, that by every Jew, because we all have a point of kedusha, which is a Yerushalayim Avesena, which is an inheritance from the Avis HaKadoshim. So because we all have Kedusha, we all have Chochmah, and in our Chochmah there's Ein Seif, and from the Ein Seif, which is in our Chochmah, we have this completely new use of the word Teva. Questions or comments? So he continues. V'zehu, and everything we just said, in talking about the Neshama, that the Neshama has Kedusha and has Chochmah and has Ein Seif, and therefore has a capacity for Munah Mesiras Nefesh. which we're now explaining as a teva, which you cannot explain at all, you should know it's not only true of the neshama. It's klal b'chol sita de kedusha. Anything that's kedusha. So far, we're talking about the neshama. Yeah. What about the Beis Hamikdash? What about the Elam Atzilus? What about a piece of physical matzah that a yid uses to do a mitzvah, or a lulav that a yid uses to do a mitzvah, or a coin which a yid uses to do a mitzvah, so they become kedusha. You should know it's klal b'chol to the kedusha. It's not only true of the neshama. Anything which is on the side of kedusha, for something to be kedusha, it must be, it can be no other way other than that it comes from the Eibishter's chokhmah of Atzilus, shenikra kedesh elyon, which is called Hashem's kedusha, habatel b'metzias, which is bottle in its form, but in Seif Baruch, when the Ein Seif Hamalubash Bey, which is revealed in chokhmah. It's not an entity unto itself. Kanal, as we discussed before, l'cheda before means peidik vav. That's what the Rabbi writes here on the margin. That's why it's called chokhmah, because the idea of chokhmah is keyachma, the power of it. So the Rebbe says we're having a conversation and we're talking about the neshama. We're having a conversation talking about the neshama because that's the issue. We're trying to understand the neshama. Says the Alter Rebbe, but I want you to know that it's anything which is in the realms of Kiddush. Questions or comments? Okay, alles eins zufrieden? Ja, nicht. Denn ich bin von Maxim und Chassim und Teven, ein gutes Jahr, ein fröhlicher und ein gesunder Jahr.